Multiple sources tell CNN the National Archives has informed Mr. Trump that it plans to hand over to special counsel Jack Smith 16 records from Trump's time in the White House that may provide critical evidence showing that Trump and his top advisors were actually aware of the actual declassification process during his time as president. Trump's public comments seem to suggest that the declassification process is quite simple. Listen to what he told CNN's Caitlin Collins in that CNN town hall last week.
Why did you take those documents with you when you left the White House?
I had every right to under the Presidential Records Act. You have the Presidential Records Act. I was there and I took what I took and it gets declassified.
Do you still have any classified documents in your possession?
Are you ready?
Do you?
No, I don't have anything. I have no classified documents. And by the way, they become automatically declassified when I took them.
A source close to Trump's legal team tells CNN that the former president may go to court to prevent the presidential records from being handed over, the ones that suggest he knew the actual declassification process, not that invented one he just told Caitlin. But he will only have about a week before the National Archives says they're giving the records to the special counsel. CNN senior legal affairs correspondent Paula Reed joins us now. Paula, what does this letter this letter from the National Archives, mean for special counsel Jack Smith's criminal investigation into Trump's handling of classified documents?
Jake, we know the special counsel is looking at several potential crimes, including the possible mishandling of classified materials. And it appears that he's focused on these records because these will help answer a question about whether the former president knowingly removed classified documents without authorization. Because according to this letter, exclusively obtained by our colleague Jamie Gangel, the archives says that these 16 records in question all reflect communications involving close presidential advisors, some of them directed to you, former President Trump, personally, concerning whether, why, and how you should declassify certain classified records. Now here, if these records could show that the former president was on notice of this process and chose to ignore it, that could help the special counsel as it contemplates whether or not to pursue charges against the former president. Though at this point, Jake, it is not clear from our reporting whether anyone will be charged with mishandling classified materials.
So, Paul, investigators seem to be working to get to Trump's intent, what he knew when he took those documents. Why is that important? And do you think that any of this suggests that the special counsel, Jack Smith, is nearing the end of his probe on this issue?
Well, the first part of that question, as they contemplate whether they want to file a charge of possibly mishandling classified documents, they would need to be able to prove that he knowingly removed these without going through the proper authorization channels. That's why these documents are critical to getting at that question of intent. In terms of whether this indicates where they are in the investigation, Jake, this letter in and of itself doesn't tell us where they are in the probe, but our other reporting with our justice team does suggest they are likely in the final phase. If you look at the kind of witnesses that they're calling, including former Vice President Mike Pence, we don't know if they've spoken to former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, but they really are getting to that top tier of witnesses, recalling other people based on what we know about the kind of things that they're doing now. We do think that they're in the final stretch, but it's unclear when that final report will be submitted. The other question, Jake, is how many other court battles will there be? As you noted, the former president's legal team could challenge this. That would extend this out a little bit longer, but it's unclear if they will file a challenge, though I am told by someone familiar with their thinking that one of the reasons they want to file this challenge, even if it may not be successful, is because they want to continue to defend both constitutional and presidential privileges.
All right, Paula Reed, thanks so much. Let's bring in former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. He's now a CNN senior political commentator. Congressman, what's your reaction to this exclusive reporting that the National Archives is apparently going to give the special counsel these records showing that Trump was fully aware of the declassification process and apparently just ignored it?
Yeah, well, first off, it's good reporting. But let me just say this. It's this idea that Donald Trump thought that he could just declare things declassified. I mean, I get it. You have to prove this in a court of law, so that's a bit of a different standard. But let's just put it through the smell test. Back when there were a lot of his allies pushing him, in fact, this may be some of the 16 documents. Remember, he had a lot of allies pushing him to declassify things around the Mueller investigation or around the Russia investigation. They all knew by their own admission that there was a process to declassify things. The president can't just take stuff home and thereby deem it declassified. So I think what's interesting is on the front end, if this is showing, and I don't know, but if this is showing or attempting to show that the president knew that he shouldn't have taken those documents without declassifying them, I think that's potentially even a bigger, like an additional charge to what appeared to be an obstruction of justice case. Because where it appeared that they had evidence was when the president found out that this was classified, he tried to obstruct law enforcement or obstruct the archives from getting a hold of this information. If, and again, this is just an if, because we don't know what's in those documents, if this is showing that from the outset he knew he shouldn't have taken those, this could be even bigger. So either way, I think, look, Americans in their heart of hearts know that the president knows he can't just deem things declassified ipso facto after the fact.
You were on the January 6th special committee, obviously. Did you learn anything during your participation in that committee that speaks to Trump's attitude when it comes to classified documents?
Well, not really specifically on that, but what you see is, and you saw this through the January 6th investigation, for instance, when the former president said to the Department of Justice, just say the election was corrupt and let me do the rest, me and the Republican congressman. The former president has this idea, and I mean, it's not far-fetched because it's kind of worked for him, where he can just declare things to be the case. For instance, I can just take classified material home and I deem it declassified at that point. And as long as he has a significant amount of, the media that supports him, a significant amount of voters that believe that, he's in good shape. And to date, that has worked out. So I think from the thing that we would see from the former president on the January 6th committee is he could just declare things, he could just say things, and people would believe it. And I think that's what you're seeing in this attitude here when it comes to these. Look, almost every former president and vice president apparently has had classified in their possession. That's not the issue. The issue is when they found out about it, what did they do?
Right.
And that's what we're going to probably learn a lot more about.
Former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, thanks so much. Good to see you. Let's discuss with our political and legal experts. Tom Dupree, if these 16 documents that the National Archives says they're going to turn over to the special counsel, Jack Smith, if they show that Trump had been informed in detail about the declassification process, which of course is not just, I think that it's declassified, therefore it magically becomes declassified, is there anything that the special counsel would need to do before bringing a charge, or do you think that would be enough for a charge in and of itself?
Well, I think he'd need other evidence. In other words, he'd need to obviously show kind of what documents were held, the timing, and all of that. But it would be a key element of what the special counsel would need to prove. In other words, we've already seen the president's legal defense here. In all likelihood, at least part of it is going to be, I declassified them when I removed them from the White House. And if the special counsel can show that that argument is a total sham, that in fact the president knew the opposite, he knew that by taking them out of the White House, it wouldn't have the effect of declassifying them, that goes a long way toward establishing motive, not just for the initial removal of the documents, but for everything that followed, for all the pursuit of these documents at Mar-a-Lago. If Trump knew all along he never should have had them, that's a big deal for the special counsel.
Do you think, assuming that Jack Smith does actually go forward and bring some sort of charges related to this, do you think that that will have any impact whatsoever on Trump's standing among Republican members of Congress, Republican officials, and Republican voters?
Those are different constituencies, to be sure,
Well,
right?
okay.
Yeah, I mean, no, look, I think there is a possibility, it's not one that I think is necessarily one I would bet a lot of money on, that the slow accretion of more baggage, more hassles, there's always something going on with this guy, hits a critical mass point when Republican voters are starting to pay attention to the primaries, which they are not now, and they're just going to say, look, I like the guy's policies, but like we need someone with less baggage, younger, blah, 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 blah. That's possible. I think for leaders of the party, for members of Congress, they're there psychologically, a lot of them, but they're not there politically because the voters haven't gone that way yet. Mm-hmm. And no one wants to, there are all these closet normals on the Hill who would very much like to move.
Closet normals.
Yeah, would very much like to move beyond the Trump era, but they can't until the voters do.
You want to out them for us right now? Or?
I think, yes, a lot of them.
Kirsten, so obviously special counsel is also investigating President Biden, and we should point out it's not the same thing. He did have classified documents, but they found them, the Biden people, and then alerted the authorities and have provided them. Yeah. But do you think politically that really does? Not to mention the Pence matter, they did the exact same thing as Biden. They found some documents and alerted people. Do you think that makes it more difficult politically for Democrats to say, to use this incident with Trump as an issue?
No, I don't think it makes it more difficult for Democrats to say that. I think it makes it easier for Republican voters, though, to say it's the same thing, right? So Republicans will come in and muddy up the waters and sort of say it's the same thing, and then the voters can go, oh, there's our out. Like, here's how we get around having to be upset about this because everybody does it, right? I think the thing for me that I don't entirely understand is the idea of a president who doesn't understand that there's a classified system for documents. Like, the average television viewer understands that, right? If you've ever seen like movies about like the White House or anything with the intelligence community, like, we know this, everybody knows this. So we're supposed to believe that the president of the United States didn't know that there was a system in place that he needed to, well, that he was surely briefed on. I mean, there's no question. But also that he would even need to, if he somehow forgot the briefing, ask somebody. It's just not, it's not plausible. I don't even understand why this is the standard. You know, that it has to be intent. I mean, if Donald Trump murders somebody and he says he's never heard of murder, then is he off the hook? Why is he only responsible if there's intent?